Hi everybody, I'm Tim from troutandfeather.com and thanks for viewing this YouTube fly tying tutorial. During this video, I'm going to show you two methods that I employ whenever I'm debarbing hooks. This is done right before the tying of the fly. It's going to be based upon the vise that you have, and I'll get to that real soon. I've been tying flies for about 25 years, and my early group of mentors used to always stress that you should debarb the hook first. Whenever I asked them why, there were two common answers. First, they wanted to ensure that that hook wasn't too brittle, that it had been finished properly. If you debarbed the hook and it broke, you didn't waste any time on a fly that would ultimately not have been fished. The second reason was a lot simpler, and that was because they wanted to ensure that you didn't forget to debarb that fly. Now, debarbing is something that, in my mind, is essential. There are certain regulations on many rivers and streams that won't allow you to fish a fly that has a barb on it. Also, I really love to practice catch and release fishing. It's one of my main styles. And I really believe that it's a lot faster if you have a hook that's been debarbed. There's a debate that goes on quite often, I see on some internet forums, but I really think that most of those points are moot. It just makes more sense. I've hooked my vest before, I've hooked my shirt before. If there's a barb in it, you know it's a lot tougher to get out, and it's the same with that fish. I want to give that fish more opportunities to live. I want to catch it again, and I want to give other fly fishermen the opportunity to catch that. Also, I don't want to be hooked by a fly that has a barb on it. It's happened to me before when I was very young. In fact, my dad and I were going out fly fishing. My dad wanted to pick up some flies, and he stopped over at my great Uncle John's house, the one that I've featured in lots of my fly tying videos. We got some flies from my great Uncle John, and my dad was making some beautiful casts prior to a river runs through it. I think he was trying to get some of these trout to just start naturally rising to his fly, and sure enough, he hooked me in my arm. It was a beautifully tied Lake Cahill by my Uncle John, and he didn't debarb it. We couldn't get the fly out, and I ended up in the emergency room. My dad loves to tell this story because the doctor came in and we found out that he too was a fly fisherman because he looked down at the fly, looked at us and said, "That's a really nice tied Lake Cahill." Mysteriously, we never got that fly back, and I'm pretty sure I know what happened to it. So with all that stuff said, I'm going to get everything reset here. I'm going to show you the two methods that I will typically use whenever I'm debarbing hooks, and I'm going to encourage all of you out there to debarb hooks prior to tying. Today we have really high quality hooks. We don't have to worry about them being brittle, but we do have to worry about those fish and hooking other individuals. As I mentioned earlier in the video, the style of vise that you use will really dictate what method you employ. In this instance, I'm using a Renzetti Traveler, which is a cam style vise. But let's not look at a specific make or model. Basically, whenever I have my jaws open, there's going to be a gap that will not shut until I manually do that with the lever. Whenever we're using a vise like this, I really prefer to open the jaws a little bit and place the hook in what I consider perpendicular. What I mean by that is basically think of it as whenever you have your hook in the vise regular, we'll call that parallel, and we'll just turn it 90 degrees and we'll call that perpendicular. So you can see what I'm talking about. I'll change the position of my jaws. I've opened them, and I can place that hook in so that the barb fits between those two jaws. Once it is between those jaws, we can close them, and typically we will at this point have completely debarbed the hook. That's what happens whenever you're using smaller trout hooks. Whenever I'm using larger hooks, such as those for saltwater or streamers, I'll typically have to debarb twice. So I'll go through that portion once, I'll close the jaws a little bit, and debarb a second time. It's kind of tough for me to do that on camera, so I'll just turn it so I can see it. I debarbed once there. It's partially, that barb is partially down, and now the second time, that barb is basically all but gone. Now I have a hook that I really don't have to worry too much about. I don't have to worry about hooking another person, hooking myself, hooking something that I'm wearing, or more importantly, removing this hook from a fish's mouth after I've caught it. Again, that first technique is going to be used whenever you have a vise that will always have open jaws that you have to manually close. I'm now going to change out vices and show you the second method. Before I show you the second method, I want to really just point out that the hook size I'm using is irrelevant. This is a larger hook, and that's for the purposes of this video. But it doesn't matter what size hook I'm using. I'm going to be really just basing the method on the vise that I'm using. In this second method, I'm using a Stonfo Cayman vise. This is a vise that's similar to a Regal. And these are spring-loaded vises. They have a lot of holding power, and whenever they're sitting idle, the jaws are clamped tight. In order to open them, you have to apply pressure to the grip, and they will open slightly. When it comes to debarbing with these vises, I say don't touch them. These vises have a lot of power in those springs, and they've been known to throw hooks whenever they've been placed in incorrectly. If you place a hook in incorrectly, the hook will come flying out, the jaws will clamp together, and they'll typically get chipped. It's really frustrating, and it can also be dangerous. By me placing that hook inside those jaws at an angle, I really have to exert some extra pressure to get that barb in, and it's something that I really just don't want to invite into everything that I have going on within fly tying. I don't want to damage the vise, I don't want to ruin the jaws, and I don't want anything to happen to my eyes if that hook comes flying out. So if you tie with a Stonfo Cayman or a Regal or any other style vise that looks similar to this, I'm going to suggest that prior to tying with that hook, you debarb outside of the vise. Grab a pair of hemostats or grab a pair of pliers. These are made by Craftsman, and the key is that they are flat on the inside. I prefer to hold the hook by the hook shank, place the pliers over the barb, squeeze down, and debarb. Once complete, you have a nice little nub on your hook in that barb section, which a lot of fly fishermen say really has incredible holding power. You can place the fly in your vise, and then you're ready to go. Those are the two methods that I will typically employ whenever I'm debarbing the hook, and it really always comes down to the style of vise that I'm using. I really will encourage you to debarb all of your hooks prior to tying. It's safer for you, it's safer for your fishing buddies, and most importantly, it's safer for the fish so that you can return them to the water. Thanks for viewing this YouTube fly tying tutorial. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them directly on this YouTube page, or as always, you can email me at tcammisa@gmail.com. If you'd like to view any of my other fly tying tutorials, you can view all of those at www.troutandfeather.com. Additionally, if you'd like to view any pictures or some new videos that I have out, you can check out my Facebook page and like it. It's facebook.com/troutandfeather. Thanks everyone for viewing this YouTube fly tying tutorial on debarbing hooks.